So we got to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy because, like I tell you guys in almost every video, the knives are out, okay? Everybody is attacking the guy. It seems like left and right are going after him because he's the shiny new thing on the block who is deciding to talk to any and everybody when it comes to his presidential campaign and his policy positions. Now, one of his more controversial policy positions that everybody seems to dislike unless you are a populist is his position on the war in Ukraine, which is that, hey, we need to seek peace, okay? We need to be diplomatic, and we need to try to bring an end to this war so that we can focus on the real enemy, which is China. Now, apparently, this position makes you a pro-Putin apologist, okay? And you have neocons like John Bolton and others go on TV and melt down and cry and throw a fit because you refuse to call Putin a war criminal, even though you're looking to hold the office of President of the United States and may have to actually talk to Putin one day in the future. But again, if you don't come out here and call him a war criminal, okay, if you don't piss him off before you actually have a chance to get into office to, you know, I don't know, try to be diplomatic, you are apparently ignorant, right? You're ignorant when it comes to foreign policy, right? Take a look.
Worked in the Trump administration, but have since been very critical of the way that Trump has interacted with, courtship with, if you will, Kim and Putin. I'm interested in your take on how one of his Republican competitors in the primary, Vivek Ramaswamy, chose to not answer questions about whether he thinks Putin is a war criminal, because it reminds me of some questions that then President Trump was asked about Putin. Here's that exchange with reporters yesterday in New Hampshire.
Yes or no, do you
I think that Putin is a dictator, and I think that there are open questions that need to be adjudicated by the ICCJ. We have an ICCJ for a reason. My job as the U.S. president is to advance American interests. So I think Putin's actions have been craven. That much I will say, and I've said it all along.
But do you believe he's a war criminal?
We have to get the facts before we get to the bottom of that.
You previously called the International Criminal Court illegitimate when it issued that warrant to arrest Putin, accusing him of war crimes. What do you make of Vivek Ramaswamy not answering the question of whether or not he thinks Putin is a war criminal?
Well, I think Ramaswamy reminds me an awful lot of Donald Trump. He has very firm opinions on subjects he knows absolutely nothing about, and this was an example of it. And if he supports the International Criminal Court, as he appeared to do in that statement, I hope he reaffirms that and makes clear why he thinks the ICC is such a good idea. Look, this is something that ultimately is going to have to be resolved either by the Russians themselves or by the Ukrainians. And the main point is that Ramaswamy has made other statements about this war and about what he's going to do to try and solve it. Like Trump said, he would put Zelensky and Putin in a room and he'd have it solved in 24 hours. Ramaswamy is going to go to Moscow, convince Putin to break the alliance with China and end the war that way. I mean, they might as well be in kindergarten talking about a very complex situation. But there's no mistake. I think Ramaswamy emulates Trump every time he can.
Ambassador John Bolton.
You know what I love about neocons coming out here and trying to lecture people on foreign policy, right? Who's ignorant on foreign policy, who's not, who's good on foreign policy, who's bad on foreign policy. These are the same people who botched Vietnam, they botched Afghanistan, they botched Iraq, they botched Syria, right? They botched all of the foreign policy interventions that we do overseas, all the nation building, all the empire toppling, dictator toppling that we do overseas. And then when you come out with different ideas, right? When you have new and fresh ideas, like for example, trying to actually be diplomatic, trying to be peaceful, right? Oh man, you're ignorant on foreign policy. You're bad on foreign policy. You're terrible, okay? And what really blows my mind is that you have normies who eat this stuff up and just repeat and believe everything that these people say, even though these people clearly really don't have a clue what they're talking about or what they're doing, considering that their track record has been absolutely terrible, right? It really blows my mind, okay? You never see the mainstream liberal media ever ask any one of these individuals, well, how do we end the war, right? But when somebody actually has a plan to end the war, whether you agree with it or not, you can say, hey, well, this really doesn't make sense for X, Y, Z reasons. Whether you agree with it or not, there's actually a plan to end the war. They scrutinize that to no end, right? They lose their mind because somebody actually has the goal of ending the war. But the people who don't have a goal of ending the war, they never scrutinize these people and taking their task over the fact that they don't have a plan to end the war, or why they're not trying harder to end the war. Okay, they just support endless funding of a war that, in my opinion, I don't think that the outcome is going to be the outcome that these people think that it is, considering our past track record and how terrible we are at fighting these proxy wars with Russia, right? Just, again, look at Afghanistan, look at Syria, look at all these places that we fought a proxy war with Russia, and how has that turned out, right? Didn't really turn out too good for us. I'm just saying. I'm just going off history. But anyways, that takes me to this interview right here with Piers Morgan, who is reminding us once again how he is an establishment shill, okay? He's good on some issues like gender and race and, you know, being against the woke stuff. But when it comes to pushing back where it really matters against the establishment, this guy is going to miss the mark here, okay? As he's going to try to take Vivek Ramaswamy to task over his position when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, how he wants peace. Let's get into it.
This is a tweet that you did on the day the war started. Putin is a bully. The way to stop a bully is to punch him in the nose, you said. Now your position is you should just give, unless I'm wrong, Ukraine should just give Putin the land he's stolen with his illegal war. I don't know how you equate those two statements.
You know what's funny about the characterization of that land being quote-unquote stolen? Okay, now, clearly, I don't endorse or condone Russia rolling in there and militarily taking it. But these two regions, right, that these people fearmonger over so much, you can make a strong argument that these regions were contested territory, okay? As in, there's been some issues and some questions about the official government of this region, okay, and who's actually running this region. But again, you know, I just find the framing here when they say that to be just fascinating, right?
So, Piers, I think there's two things here. One is we should have never been in this situation in the first place, because if the U.S. actually had energy independence, if we drilled, we fracked, we were a net exporter of energy, Putin would have never had the leverage to go after Ukraine. But now being where we are, it is our job to make sure that we secure peace and advance American interests without sleepwalking into World War III. That is what I'm leading us to do. And
How have you moved?
The answer is I don't want to.
But how have you moved from a guy who illegally invades a country, a democratic sovereign country?
Yes.
You said the only way to stop this bully, Putin, is to punch him in the nose. But when Ukraine, in my view, valiantly fight for their territory and their people, and Putin still takes a load of their land, your answer to the bully is to now give him what he's taken illegally.
Well, the answer is to do what is practical in regards to ending the war. Because what is your alternative here, Piers? Right? It's easy to come up here and say, well, you're giving Putin land that he stole. Okay, well, what is the alternative? Is the alternative to continue to fight and fight and fight until what happens? By the way, we really don't know what is the end game that these people are presenting. They're not presenting anything. They're just telling you, hey, we need to just support this whole thing happening until something happens that they can't really tell us is going to happen if they don't have an end game, right? But when somebody comes along and says, hey, look, well, let's try to come to some type of compromise here that will satisfy both parties in order to end this, to stop the bloodshed, to stop the fighting, apparently that's a bad thing, right? That's a bad thing. But these same people can't tell you the end goal or the end game in regards to just funding this forever, right? Having no peace plan. Again, it's fascinating.
No, that's not correct, actually. It's going to be to require a major concession from that bully so that we don't ratchet this up to the next level.
It's a third of the country you want to give him.
No. Piers, I think you either, I mean, and it's not your job to know every aspect of everything I've said. If you're questioning on me on it, I would ask you to know what I've said countless times. I would actually require Putin to exit his military alliance with China. That is the big demand and requirement we will have for any deal of any kind. That Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest threat to the West and to the United States as we know it.
I agree, right? I agree. But again, what these people who claim to be foreign policy experts want you to believe is that we can take on China and Russia at the same time, right? You don't understand. We got to take on both at the same time. These are the same people. If you ask them about what would the United States do right now if China invaded Taiwan, they wouldn't have an answer. Vivek gets a lot of criticism for his foreign policy, but to me, he seems to be one of the only candidates on stage that actually has a foreign policy, okay? Because again, I don't think that any of these other candidates could articulate a foreign policy or what they would do in a situation where China invaded Taiwan. I'm not sure they would take a position on it. They also can't tell you what the end goal is when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. They can't tell you end goal. They can't give you a peace plan, right? But Trump or Vivek Ramaswamy comes out and says, hey, well, I want peace, right? I'm going to try to actually, you know, exercise diplomacy. I'm going to try to get both leaders to the table and work something out. Oh, well, that's bad. That's terrible. You're Putin apology. You're kissing Putin's ass, right? But again, these are the same people who want you to believe that we can take on Russia and China at the same time. That's a smart thing to do. Imagine the position that we will be in if we say, you know, we're fully committed to funding this war against Ukraine and Russia, and then China rose into Taiwan. And then we're fighting both countries at the same time. I'm just saying, that's the position that the current policy and administration is probably going to have us in, right? If we continue to go down this path. That doesn't sound to me like something that the American people would want, or something that we could actually sustain and be successful at doing. This is what they want you to think.
Putin is in Xi Jinping's arms. Communist China is fundamentally hostile to the United States. And I have a clear vision for how to pull Russia apart from China. We will end the Ukraine war on terms that leave Ukraine's sovereignty intact. I will note, Piers, I'm skeptical that that's even the path that Ukraine is on right now.
Facts. That's exactly the point. The whole point. What is the path that they're on right now? What is the end goal of what's happening right now? None of these people can tell you. They don't have an answer. But they'll sit here and they'll criticize you and say you're pro-Russia if you say, hey, I want peace. I think China's a bigger enemy. Again, what's going on over there in Ukraine? That is a conflict that has been going on a lot longer than I've been alive, than a lot of these politicians have been alive, okay? And I just personally think it's better we stay out of it, okay? We worry about things that actually have a real strategic interest to us, right? Like China, okay? And I don't necessarily think that Russia should be the main focus. This is not the Cold War. It's not the Soviet Union glory days post-World War II, which, by the way, I don't think Russia gets enough credit for their role in World War II and actually taking down Nazi Germany, right? I mean, they lost a lot of bodies, right? They lost a lot of casualties, okay? They don't get nearly enough credit in regards to their role in World War II, okay? I'm just being, this is my historian hat here. Not that I'm a historian, but I'm just saying I personally don't think they get enough credit. But I'm just saying, regardless, a lot of these politicians, they're living in the past, and I think that that is what is driving a lot of this hate and animosity towards Russia. Again, I'm not saying that some of it is not deserved. You know, they have been our enemy, but you got to realize that we got bigger fish to fry, right? I don't think Russia is the threat that they used to be. They're just not.
So that's a win for Ukraine, but more importantly, it's a win for the U.S.
It's not a win for Ukraine, though.
You know what?
If you were president of the United States,
I think it's better than
tell them they have to
losing
give
its sovereignty.
Yeah, but giving a bully what he's taken illegally is not, to me, strong leadership.
Well, again, you're not giving it to him. This is an exchange, right? It's an exchange. He's saying, look, I would do this in exchange for Putin breaking up his military alliance with China. Now, would Putin actually agree? I'm not sure. I think that actually is what a real criticism should be, right? I don't think that Vivek is above criticism, but a vast majority of the criticism towards this guy is just dumb stuff, right? It's dumb stuff. I think if you're actually really going to push him on his foreign policy, you should say, well, why would Putin break his military alliance with China in exchange for these two regions in Ukraine? Why would he do that? How are you going to make him come to the table and accept that? That to me is a more legitimate question. I want to hear the answer to that question, but we can never get there because if you promote peace or you're for peace, you don't want to see any more bloodshed. You don't want to see any more money sent to this thing. Oh, again, you're pro-Putin, right? You're pro-Russia. Again, it's ridiculous.
Well, Piers, I'm not giving anybody what he's taken. The fact of the matter is we have to honor our commitments. We had a commitment to Ukraine in 1994. We fulfilled that commitment. But James Baker also made a commitment to Gorbachev in 1990 on behalf of the U.S., saying that NATO would expand not 1 inch past East Germany. Turns out NATO has expanded far more after the fall of the USSR than when the USSR ever existed. So I do think that we should be clear that NATO should not admit Ukraine to NATO.
Okay.
But I want to be really clear about this, Piers. I'm not letting Putin his actions are craven. I've said so, but I don't trust Putin. I do trust him to follow his self-interest.
Is he still a?
And we will do a deal that causes him to exit. Many.
So again, this guy Pierce, and this is why I say he's just an establishment shield here, right? Because this is now you need to say the talking points, right? Say what we tell you to say. He doesn't ask about what Vivek is talking about here in regards to NATO and the United States breaking their commitments to Russia, right? He doesn't ask about that, okay, which would be a real question. What do you think? You still think he's a bully? You got to come out here and say he's a bully, right? This is the equivalent of the mainstream media pressing GOP candidates or attacking Trump. Well, you still need to attack Trump. You still don't think the election was stolen, right? You still think Trump's a bad person, right? Again, it's mind-boggling just how silly the media can be sometimes when they're obviously trying to push an agenda rather than actually being journalists and having a real conversation about this war and whether or not we should continue to fund it. Are our priorities out of line? No, you'll never actually have that real debate. They will always try to sidestep the debate to focus on something that really doesn't matter, like calling Putin a war criminal or a bully. Why in the world would somebody, right, if you're actually really trying to be diplomatic, which it seems like a lot of these people are not, why would you call somebody a bully and a warmonger? Okay, why would you do that if you know that you're about to take office? Why insult somebody that you want to come to the table to do a peace deal with? See, that's what blows my mind about these people. They're upset that somebody who's thinking about taking office is not insulting somebody that he wants to do a peace agreement with ahead of time. It shows you everything you need to know about how these people are not interested in peace. They're not interested in peace. They're not interested in diplomacy, right? They're not interested in any of that stuff. They're interested in just pushing the warmonger agenda for the military-industrial complex who gets rich off of endless wars. This is why once Afghanistan was done, we jumped into this quick, fast, in a hurry because we needed something else, right? We needed something else. We had to keep the money train going at the expense of U.S. taxpayers. Because, again, the politicians get a kickback from the defense contracting industry for funding these wars. That's how they keep their campaigns funded.
Autocrats around the world are bullies. Putin is one of them. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, you have to actually do a deal that advances everybody's self-interest.
Okay.
Require Russia to exit its partnership with China. Okay. That's the key to the kingdom.
You can't do a deal if you're running around insulting the person you're trying to do a deal with. But again, this is a foreign concept to the mainstream liberal media. You have to come out here and say the magic words, right? Trump bad, Putin evil, right? Again, you have to repeat that. And if you don't repeat it, then, you know, you are an insurrectionist or you're pro-Russia, okay? You're pro-Putin. Again, it's so silly, bro. It really is. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.